The sun hung low and angry over the Badlands, painting the sky the color of dried blood. Eliza Carrington rode through the dust and sage, her black morning dress inappropriate for the journey but necessary for the statement. 3 days of hard riding had brought her here, to this God-forsaken stretch of nowhere that had swallowed her husband whole. The letter crinkled in her breast pocket with each movement of her mare. Sheriff Tom Carrington's final words, written in haste the night before he died, pressed against her heart like a wound that wouldn't heal. She'd read it so many times she could recite it from memory, but the paper itself had become sacred, the last thing his hands had touched before the bullets found him. Mercy's Bend appeared on the horizon like a mirage, wavering in the heat. It wasn't much to look at, a collection of weathered buildings huddled together against the vastness of the desert, as if seeking comfort in their shared misery. The town seemed to shrink from her approach, windows darkening as curtains twitched closed. Eliza kept her spine straight despite the exhaustion that threatened to topple her from the saddle. Let them look, let them wonder. A sheriff's widow had business here, though they didn't need to know what kind just yet. The main street was wider than most frontier towns, built to accommodate cattle drives that had dried up years ago. Now it just made the place look emptier, lonelier. A few horses stood tied to hitching posts, their heads hanging low in the heat. A dog sprawled in the shade of the general store, too tired to lift its head at her passing. The saloon stood at the center of town like a king holding court among peasants. "Rourke's Place," proclaimed the sign above the bat-wing doors, the letters painted in fading gold. It was the only building that showed signs of recent maintenance, its windows clean, its porch swept free of the ever-present dust. Eliza dismounted, her legs trembling from the long ride. She tied her mare to the post and paused to gather her courage. The last saloon she'd entered had been on her wedding day, when Tom had insisted on buying drinks for the whole town. That seemed like someone else's life now. The doors swung inward at her touch, and she stepped from blazing daylight into cool shadows. The smell hit her first, whiskey and tobacco smoke, sweat and sawdust. Her eyes adjusted slowly, revealing a room that was cleaner than most of its kind. The bar gleamed with polish, the mirror behind it reflecting rows of bottles like liquid amber and gold. A handful of men occupied the tables, their conversation dying as they noticed her. A woman in mourning clothes didn't belong here. A respectable woman didn't belong here at all. "We're closed." The voice came from behind the bar, deep and flat as prairie land. The man who emerged from the shadows made her breath catch despite herself. He was tall, built like someone who'd learned to use his size as both tool and weapon. Dark hair fell across a face that might have been handsome if it hadn't been carved from granite. His eyes were the color of winter sky, cold and distant. "The door was open," Eliza said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "Mistake on my part." He didn't move to usher her out, though, instead, he studied her with those pale eyes, taking in the dust on her dress, the exhaustion she couldn't quite hide. "You lost, ma'am? No?" She moved further into the room, ignoring the stares of the other patrons. "I need a room for the night. Hotel's 2 doors down. It's full." His mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but acknowledgement of her lie. They both knew the hotel had probably been empty for months. Towns like this didn't get many visitors, and those they did get usually preferred the rooms above the saloon, where questions weren't asked and memories were short. "I don't rent to respectable women," he said. "Good thing I'm not feeling particularly respectable, then." That got a reaction, just a flicker of something in those cold eyes, there and gone like heat lightning. He reached under the bar and produced a glass, filling it with water from a pitcher. The gesture was oddly gentle for such large hands. "Drink this first," he said, sliding it across the bar. "Then we'll talk." Eliza approached the bar, aware of every eye in the room following her movement. The water was cool and clean, better than anything she'd had on the trail. She drained it in long swallows, not caring if it was ladylike. "You running from something?" the bartender asked. "No." She set the empty glass down with a decisive click. "I'm running to something. In Mercy's Bend." His skepticism was sharp as alkali. Lady, the only thing people find here is trouble or death, sometimes both. Maybe that's what I'm looking for." He studied her for a long moment. Up close, she could see the lines around his eyes, the kind that came from squinting into too many suns. A scar ran along his jaw, white against tanned skin. His shirt was clean but worn, his vest dark leather that had seen better decades. "Gideon Rourke," he said finally. "I own this place." "Eliza," she caught herself. Tom had always said never give your whole name to strangers, especially in towns where the law was more suggestion than rule. "Just Eliza. Well, just Eliza. I've got one room. It's not fancy. Lock's broken, and the window faces the alley where the drunks relieve themselves. 50 cents a night, paid in advance." It was highway robbery for a broken room, but she recognized the test. He was giving her an out, a reason to seek lodging elsewhere. She reached into her pocket and placed a silver dollar on the bar. 2 nights. He pocketed the coin without making change. "You planning on finding what you're looking for that quick?" "Maybe, maybe not. But 2 nights is all I'm planning for now." Smart woman. He reached behind him and took a key from a row of hooks. "Upstairs, last door on the right. Dinner's at 6 if you're interested." "Nothing fancy. Whatever Maria feels like cooking." Eliza took the key, the metal warm from hanging in the afternoon heat. "Thank you, Mr. Rourke. One more thing." His voice stopped her as she turned toward the stairs. "Whatever business brought you here, keep it outside my walls. I run a peaceful establishment. I'll keep that in mind." She climbed the narrow stairs, feeling the weight of exhaustion in every step. The hallway was dim, lit only by a single window at the far end. Her room was as advertised, small, spare, with a bed that had seen better days and a washstand with a chipped basin. The broken lock was obvious. The window did indeed overlook an alley that smelled of things best not contemplated, but it was shelter. And for now, that was enough. Eliza sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out Tom's letter. The paper was soft from handling, the ink already starting to fade. "My darling Eliza," it began. "If you're reading this, then my fears have come to pass. There's corruption in this territory that runs deeper than anyone knows. I've been tracking it for months, and the trail leads to Mercy's Bend. There's a man there, but I dare not put his name to paper. Trust no one, my love. If I don't make it back, don't come looking for answers. Live your life. Be happy. But if you do come, and knowing you, you will, remember that sometimes the most dangerous men are those who hide in plain sight. All my love. Tom." She folded the letter carefully and returned it to her pocket. Outside, she could hear the life of the saloon continuing below, the clink of glasses, the murmur of conversation, someone's bark of laughter. Normal sounds of normal people living their normal lives, unaware that a widow had come to town with vengeance in her heart. The sun was setting properly now, painting her little room in shades of orange and red. Eliza unpinned her traveling hat and set it on the rickety table by the window. Her reflection in the cracked mirror showed a woman she barely recognized, thinner than before, her brown eyes harder, her once soft face carved sharp by grief. She poured water from the pitcher into the basin and washed the trail dust from her face and hands. The water turned rusty brown. 3 days of hard travel swirling away. If only she could wash away the past 3 months as easily. A knock at the door made her freeze, too soft to be threatening, too deliberate to be accidental. "Yes?" "It's Maria. Senora, Mr. Rourke said to bring you something to eat." Eliza opened the door to find a Mexican woman perhaps 10 years her senior, with kind eyes and work-worn hands. She carried a tray with a bowl of stew, fresh bread, and another glass of water. "You don't need to bring it up," Eliza said. "I can come down." "Mr. Rourke, he say you tired from traveling. Better you eat in peace." Maria set the tray on the small table. "The stew is good tonight, my mother's recipe." "Thank you, that's very kind." Maria paused at the door. "Senora, forgive me, but you are the sheriff's widow? From Cedar Falls?" Eliza's hand instinctively moved to her pocket, where Tom's badge lay hidden. How did you— Your husband. He was here 3 months ago. A good man. I'm sorry for what happened. Before Eliza could respond, Maria was gone, the door closing softly behind her. The smell of the stew filled the small room. Beef and chilies, onions and something else. Some spice that spoke of home and comfort and all the things Eliza had lost. She ate mechanically, her mind racing. Tom had been here. People remembered him. That was good. It meant there might be others who could tell her what he'd been investigating, who he'd spoken to, what had drawn him back out into the desert where death had been waiting. Night fell properly as she finished eating. The sounds from below grew louder as more men arrived for their evening whiskey. Through her window, she could see other buildings lighting up. The hotel she'd claimed was full, a few houses. What might have been a dance hall at the far end of town. Somewhere in this dust-blown nowhere was the answer to why Tom had died. Someone here knew who had ordered the ambush, who had pulled the trigger, who had left her husband bleeding out in the sand while buzzards circled overhead. Eliza pulled off her morning dress and hung it carefully on a peg. Tomorrow she would need to blend in better, perhaps buy something more practical from the general store. Tonight, though, she would plan. She would think. She would remember why she had come. The bed was surprisingly comfortable despite its appearance. As she lay back, she could hear footsteps in the hall, the creak of doors, muffled voices. Below, someone was playing a harmonica, the melody mournful and sweet. It reminded her of the nights Tom would whistle while cleaning his guns, preparing for another day of keeping the peace in a land that had precious little of it. "I'll find them," she whispered into the darkness. "I promise you, Tom, I'll find them all." Sleep came eventually, bringing dreams of gunfire and blood, of Tom's face as she'd last seen it, and strangely, of winter sky eyes that seemed to see straight through to her soul. The morning sun crept through Eliza's window like an unwelcome visitor, bringing with it the sounds of a town reluctantly coming to life. She'd been awake for an hour already, watching Mercy's Bend reveal itself in the growing light. From her window, she could see the general store opening, the owner, a thin man with spectacles, sweeping his porch with methodical strokes. Beyond that, the mayor's office stood proud and useless, its flagpole bare. She dressed in the simplest dress she'd brought, still black but less formal than yesterday's traveling clothes. Tom's badge sat heavy in her pocket, a constant reminder of her purpose. The saloon was quieter in the morning, only a few early drinkers nursing their habits in the corners. Gideon Rourke stood behind the bar, cleaning glasses with the same methodical care she'd noticed yesterday. He glanced up as she descended the stairs but said nothing. "Coffee?" he asked when she approached the bar. "Please." He poured from a pot that had been simmering on a small stove, the liquid black as tar and probably twice as strong. She took a sip and managed not to wince. "Maria usually serves breakfast in the back room," he said, nodding toward a door she hadn't noticed yesterday. "Unless you'd prefer to eat alone?" "The back room is fine." It was smaller than the main saloon, with just 4 tables and windows that actually let in light. 2 men sat at one table, discussing cattle prices in low voices. They looked up when she entered, touched their hats politely, then went back to their business. Maria appeared with a plate of eggs and biscuits before Eliza had even settled in her chair. "You sleep okay?" "Senora." "Well enough, thank you." "Mr. Rourke, he says you stay another night? Perhaps, I haven't decided yet." Maria's eyes were knowing. Sometimes decisions make themselves. "No?" "After breakfast." Eliza ventured out into the town proper. The general store was her first stop. She needed supplies and information in equal measure. The proprietor, Mr. Silas Crane, according to the sign, watched her approach with the avid interest of a man who lived for gossip. "Morning, ma'am. Help you find something?" "I need some practical clothes," she said. "Riding skirts, if you have them. Just got some in from Kansas City." He bustled around the counter, eager to please a paying customer. "Terrible sorry for your loss, ma'am. Couldn't help but notice the morning clothes." "Thank you." She kept her voice neutral, inviting continuation without seeming eager. "Recent loss?" 3 months. Ah. He pulled out several skirts, laying them on the counter. The fever's been bad this year. Took my nephew over in Tucson. It wasn't fever. Something in her tone made him look up sharply. I see. Well, these here are good quality. Reinforced seams for riding. She selected 2 skirts and some plainer shirtwaists. As he wrapped them, she asked casually, "Is the town always this quiet?" "Mostly. We get excitement now and then." "Why, just 3 months ago we had a sheriff come through from Cedar Falls, asking questions, stirring things up." He leaned in conspiratorially. "Between you and me, ma'am, I think he was looking into that business with the land grants." "Land grants?" "Oh, yes. Big mess with the territorial records. Some folks saying they own land they don't. Other folks losing land they've worked for years. Sheriff Carrington, I think his name was, he was real interested in all that." Eliza's heart hammered, but she kept her face calm. "Did he find what he was looking for?" "Hard to say. He left town sudden-like one night. Deputy Holbrook said he got word of trouble elsewhere." Crane's face darkened. "Then we heard about the ambush. Terrible thing. Just terrible." "This Deputy Holbrook, is he the law here now?" "Such as it is." Crane's tone suggested volumes. "You'll find him at the jail most mornings, afternoons. He's usually at Rourke's place." She paid for her purchases and stepped back into the morning heat. The jail was across the street, a squat building that looked more like a reinforced shed. Through the window, she could see a man with his feet up on the desk, apparently asleep. Instead of waking him, she continued her exploration. The town was laid out simply. One main street with a few smaller ones branching off. At the north end stood a collection of better houses, what passed for the wealthy section. One house, in particular, caught her eye, a 2-story affair with actual glass windows and a fence that wasn't falling down. "That's Seth Langton's place." The voice startled her. A young woman had appeared at her elbow, pretty despite the hardware of frontier life. Her dress was bright blue, the color of defiance against the dust. "I'm sorry. The big house, that's Mr. Langton's. Owns most of the good land around here, and what he doesn't own, he's trying to buy." The woman extended a hand. "Sally Morrison. I run the boarding house. Eliza." She shook the offered hand, finding it calloused but warm. "You're staying at Rourke's?" It wasn't a question. "He doesn't usually take in respectable women." "Maybe I'm not as respectable as I look." Sally laughed, a sound like water in the desert. "Oh, I like you already. Listen, if you need anything, female things, you come see me. This town's hard enough without us women making it harder on each other." "That's kind of you." "It's practical. We're outnumbered out here 10-1. Gotta stick together." Sally's eyes sharpened. "Though I'd be careful around Rourke if I were you." "Why's that?" "He's not what he seems. None of them are, really, but him especially. Man doesn't just appear in a town like this with enough money to buy a saloon outright, not without a past worth hiding." Before Eliza could respond, Sally was moving on, calling a greeting to another woman across the street. The warning lingered like smoke. The afternoon found Eliza back at the saloon. The lunch crowd had gathered, cowboys from the nearby ranches, a few merchants, and in the corner, a group of men who looked like they'd never worked an honest day in their lives. Gamblers, probably, or worse. She took a seat where she could watch the room, ordering coffee that she didn't want just to have a reason to stay. Deputy Holbrook had indeed shown up, a slovenly man with a badge that needed polishing and eyes that never quite focused. He was deep in his cups already, regaling anyone who'd listen with tales of his supposed bravery. "Course, Sheriff Carrington didn't understand how things work out here," he was saying. "Came in with his big city ideas about law and order. I tried to tell him, you gotta work with people, not against them." "That why he left so quick?" one of the cowboys asked. "Got a telegram," Holbrook said, but his eyes shifted as he spoke. "Urgent business. Left that very night. Didn't even say goodbye proper." Funny how that urgent business led him straight into an ambush. Another man commented. The room went quiet. Holbrook's face flushed red. You suggesting something? Martinez? Just observing. Man comes asking questions about land grants, leaves in a hurry, ends up dead, makes a person think. Well, don't think too hard. Might strain something. Holbrook stood unsteadily. I got rounds to make. He staggered out, leaving behind a room full of meaningful glances. Eliza filed away every face, every reaction. Tom had always said that in any crime, the innocent talked while the guilty stayed silent. Several men in this room were being very quiet indeed. As evening approached, the character of the saloon changed. The working men left for home or bunkhouse, replaced by those who did their business in darkness. The gamblers set up their games. Ladies in bright dresses appeared from upstairs rooms, and the liquor flowed freer. Eliza had moved to a corner table, nursing the same cup of coffee she'd been pretending to drink all day. She'd learned much from listening, about the land disputes, about Seth Langton's growing power, about the sheriff who'd asked too many questions. You planning on growing roots in that chair? Gideon Rourke stood beside her table, having appeared with that unsettling silence she'd noticed before. In the lamplight, the planes of his face were all shadows and secrets. Just watching the show, she said. Most respectable women would have left hours ago. We've established I'm not most women. He pulled out the opposite chair and sat without invitation. No, you're not. Question is, what exactly are you? A widow. Looking for a new start. In Mercy's Bend, his laugh was without humor. Lady, this town doesn't do new starts. It does last stops. Maybe that's what I need. He studied her with those pale eyes, and she had the uncomfortable feeling he could see straight through her carefully constructed calm. You know, your husband sat in that very chair 3 months ago. The coffee cup rattled as she set it down. What? Sheriff Tom Carrington. Good man, terrible poker player. He leaned back, watching her reaction. You favor him around the eyes. There was no point denying it now. Why didn't you say anything yesterday? Wanted to see what you'd do, whether you'd trust me with the truth or keep lying. His expression was unreadable. Can't say I blame you for the lying. Truth's dangerous in this town. What did he tell you when he was here? That he was looking into some irregularities with land titles. That he suspected someone was using forged documents to steal property. That he needed to find proof before he could act. Did he find it? If he did, he didn't share it with me. Gideon signaled to the bartender, a younger man who'd taken over the evening shift. But he was excited that last night, said he had a meeting that would break everything open. Who was he meeting? He didn't say. Left around midnight. Told me he'd be back in the morning. His jaw tightened. Next I heard, he was dead. Eliza's hands clenched in her lap. So close. Tom had been so close to answers. Why are you telling me this? Because I liked your husband. Because I don't like what's happening to this town. Because... He stopped, shook his head. Because you remind me of someone I used to know. Someone who couldn't leave well enough alone either. What happened to her? She died. The words were flat. Final. This territory eats people. Mrs. Carrington. Especially the ones who think they can change things. I have to try. Why? What's it going to accomplish? Your husband's dead. Knowing who killed him won't bring him back. It's not about bringing him back. The words came out fiercer than intended. It's about justice. It's about making sure the men who did this don't do it to someone else. Justice. He said it like a foreign word. There's no justice out here. Just survival and compromise. You don't believe that. Don't I? He leaned forward, his voice dropping. Let me tell you how this works. Seth Langton owns half this territory. What he doesn't own, he controls through men like Holbrook. Your husband threatened that control, so they killed him. Simple as that. Then why don't you do something about it? Because I'm not a lawman. I'm not a hero. I'm just a man who wants to run his saloon in peace. But his eyes said different. His eyes said he was lying too. Thunder rumbled in the distance, unusual for the season. The air grew heavy with the promise of rain. "There's a storm coming," he said, standing. "In more ways than one. If you're smart, you'll be gone before it hits. I'm not going anywhere." "Then you're a fool." But he said it almost gently. "Your room's paid through tomorrow. After that, you'll need to make other arrangements." "Are you throwing me out?" "I'm trying to save your life." He turned to go, then paused. "Your husband asked me to look into something for him. Property records at the land office. The clerk there, Edmonds. He keeps copies of everything. Might be worth a conversation." Then he was gone, leaving Eliza alone with her cold coffee and racing thoughts. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall, unusual and violent, turning the dust to mud. She watched the storm build, thinking of Tom, of justice, of pale eyes that saw too much. Tomorrow she would visit the land office. Tomorrow she would push deeper into the mystery that had killed her husband. But tonight, she sat in a frontier saloon and let the rain wash the world clean, if only for a while. The thunder crashed again, closer now, and somewhere in the darkness, she thought she heard the echo of gunshots. Or maybe it was just her imagination, conjuring the sound that haunted her dreams. Either way, Gideon Rourke was right about one thing. A storm was definitely coming. The land office was a narrow building squeezed between the barber shop and a boarded-up millinery, as if the town itself was trying to hide its bureaucratic heart. Eliza had waited until mid-morning to visit, watching from her window as the clerk, Mr. Edmonds, arrived precisely at 9 o'clock. He was a rabbit of a man, all nervous energy and twitching whiskers, who nearly jumped out of his skin when she entered. "Oh, ma'am, you startled me. We don't get many visitors." He adjusted his spectacles with shaking hands. "How may I assist you?" "I'm interested in some property records," Eliza said, keeping her voice pleasant but businesslike. "Specifically, transfers from the last 6 months." His face went pale. "I'm afraid those records that is, they're not available for public viewing without proper authorization." "From whom?" "Mr. Langton oversees all land transactions now. Territory appointed him special administrator." "How convenient. What about older records, from before his appointment?" Edmonds glanced toward the window as if expecting to see someone watching. "Those are archived, very disorganized. It would take considerable time to locate anything specific." Eliza placed a gold eagle on the counter. The clerk's eyes widened at the sight of $20, likely more than he made in a month. "I have time," she said softly. For a moment, greed warred with fear on his face. Fear won. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I can't help you. Please leave." She left the coin on the counter. "If you change your mind, I'm staying at Rourke's." The afternoon brought unexpected violence. Eliza had been crossing the street when a commotion erupted outside the saloon. 2 cowboys faced off against 3 of the hard-looking men she'd noticed the day before. Words escalated to shoves to punches, and suddenly guns were being drawn. "That's enough!" Gideon Rourke's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. He stood on the saloon porch, a shotgun cradled casually in his arms. Despite the casual pose, there was nothing relaxed about him. He looked like coiled violence waiting to spring. "Take your disagreement elsewhere. Gentlemen, not in front of my establishment." One of the hard cases, a man with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, sneered. "Since when do you give orders?" "Rourke, since I'm the one holding the scattergun." His voice was conversational, almost pleasant. "Now move along, Dawson, before I decide you're bad for business." For a moment, the tension stretched taut as wire. Then Dawson spat in the dirt and motioned to his companions. "This ain't over, Rourke. It never is." The men dispersed, leaving Eliza standing in the street. Gideon's eyes found her, and something flickered across his face. Annoyance? Concern? "Inside," he said, not a request. She followed him into the saloon, noting how he kept the shotgun ready until the doors swung shut behind them. He set the weapon behind the bar with practiced ease, then poured himself a whiskey. You have a talent for being in the wrong place. What was that about? Territory politics. Dawson and his boys work for Langton. The cowboys ride for the Bar J Ranch. There's been disputes over water rights. He knocked back the whiskey in one swallow. It's getting worse. Because of the land grabs? His eyes sharpened. You've been asking questions. Is that a crime? In this town, it might be. He poured another drink but didn't lift it. Edmund sent word. Says you tried to bribe him. I offered to pay for his time. Same thing to a man like Langton. He finally looked at her directly. You're stirring up hornets. Mrs. Carrington, they're starting to notice. Good. Maybe if they're watching me, they'll make a mistake. Or maybe they'll just kill you. The words were brutal in their simplicity. Your husband thought he was clever too. The blow landed as intended. Eliza felt her composure crack. Don't you dare. What? Tell you the truth. He came here with his badge and his righteousness, thinking that meant something. It didn't. It just made him a target. He was trying to help people. And look where it got him. Gideon's voice gentled slightly. I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm trying to keep you from joining him. Why do you care? The question hung between them. He looked away first, focusing on the amber liquid in his glass. I told you, I liked your husband. That's not an answer. It's all you're getting. That night, Eliza found herself watching Gideon work from her corner table. He moved through the saloon with an economy of motion that spoke of long practice, breaking up fights before they started, cutting off drunks before they got mean, managing his domain with quiet authority. There was something about him that didn't fit. His hands were too steady for a long-time drinker, his eyes too sharp for a simple saloon keeper. When he rolled up his sleeves to help move a table, she caught sight of a tattoo on his forearm, military insignia, if she wasn't mistaken. You're staring. Sally Morrison slid into the seat across from her. The boarding house owner had dressed up for her evening out, though the effect was somewhat ruined by the practical boots peeking out from under her skirts. Just observing. Sally's smile was knowing. He's a handsome devil. I'll give you that. Dangerous, though. You warned me about that already. Worth repeating. You know what he was before he came here? No. Neither does anyone else. He showed up 2 years ago with enough gold to buy this place outright from old Murphy. Never said where he came from. Never talks about his past. Sally leaned in. But I'll tell you something. That man's killed before. You can see it in his eyes. Eliza thought of how he'd handled the shotgun, the casual competence that came from long familiarity. A lot of men out here have... Not like him. Sally's voice dropped further. There's killing for survival, killing for duty. And then there's what he's done, the kind that changes a man forever. Before Eliza could ask what she meant, a new disturbance arose. The saloon doors burst open, admitting Deputy Holbrook and 3 men, all obviously drunk. Rourke. Holbrook's voice was slurred but belligerent. Need to talk to you about harboring undesirable elements. Gideon set down the glass he'd been polishing. Evening. Deputy. Bit early in the week for you to be this drunk, isn't it? Don't get smart with me. Holbrook swayed slightly. You got a woman staying here, asking questions, stirring up trouble. I run a boarding house. People stay here, not people like her. Holbrook's bloodshot eyes found Eliza. You know who you are now. Carrington's widow. Come to cause problems just like he did. The saloon had gone quiet. Eliza stood slowly, aware of every eye on her. I'm not causing any problems, Deputy. Not yet, but you will. He lurched toward her. Your husband couldn't leave well enough alone. Got what he deserved for it. The words were barely out of his mouth when Gideon moved. One moment he was behind the bar. The next, he had Holbrook's arm twisted behind his back. The drunk deputy's face pressed against a table. You're going to apologize to the lady, Gideon said quietly. Then you're going to leave my establishment, and if you ever speak about her husband that way again, I'll make sure you regret it. You can't threaten an officer of the law. I don't see any officers here, just a drunk who's forgetting his manners. He twisted harder, drawing a yelp. The apology. Now. Sorry, Holbrook gasped. Sorry, ma'am. Gideon released him, stepping back smoothly. Gentlemen, please escort the deputy home. He's had enough excitement for one night. Holbrook's companions helped him to his feet, the deputy shooting murderous looks at both Gideon and Eliza as they left. The saloon slowly returned to its normal buzz, though the atmosphere remained charged. You shouldn't have done that, Eliza said when Gideon returned to the bar. Probably not. He'll remember this. Definitely. Then why? Because nobody talks about good men that way in my place. His eyes met hers. Not even worthless deputies. Something shifted between them in that moment. A recognition, perhaps, or an understanding. Eliza found herself moving to the bar, taking a seat on one of the stools. Thank you. He poured her a whiskey without asking. Don't thank me yet. Holbrook's a coward, but he's Langton's coward. This will get back to him. I'm not afraid of Seth Langton. You should be. He poured his own drink. Your husband wasn't. And look what happened. Tell me about the land records, she said, changing the subject. What was Tom looking for specifically? Gideon glanced around, then leaned closer. There's a pattern. Families who've worked claims for years suddenly finding out they don't own their land. Documents appearing that show they sold out months ago, even though they never did. Always selling to the same company, Mountain Vista Holdings, which is owned by a consortium of investors. Very private, very connected. His voice dropped further. But rumors say Langton's behind it all. Tom found proof? Maybe. He spent hours in the land office the last 2 days he was here. Edmonds was nervous as a cat after he left. Gideon straightened as another customer approached. That's all I know. But Eliza could tell it wasn't. There was more. There was always more. She sipped the whiskey, feeling it burn down her throat, and wondered what secrets Gideon Rourke was hiding behind those winter eyes. Later, alone in her room, she pulled out Tom's letter again. Sometimes the most dangerous men are those who hide in plain sight. Had he meant Langton, with his veneer of respectability? Holbrook, hiding corruption behind a badge? Or someone else entirely? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She opened the door to find Maria holding a bundle. Senora, I found this. It was in the room your husband used. She handed over a leather journal, its pages water-stained but readable. I kept it safe. Didn't know if anyone would come for it. Eliza's hands trembled as she took it. Tom's journal. His investigation notes. Maria, thank you. Your husband. He was kind to me, to my family. When my nephew was accused of stealing, he looked into it, found the real thief. Maria's eyes glistened. You find who killed him. Senora, you make them pay. After Maria left, Eliza lit every candle in the room and began to read. Tom's neat handwriting filled page after page, names, dates, property transfers. A web of corruption slowly emerging, with Seth Langton at its center. But there was another name that appeared repeatedly, a name that made her blood run cold. Gideon Rourke, according to Tom's notes. Rourke had arrived in Mercy's Bend just as the land troubles began. His purchase of the saloon had been in gold coins, unusual for such a large transaction, and several witnesses had seen him meeting with Langton privately. Though both men denied any business relationship, Eliza set down the journal, her mind spinning. Was Gideon working with Langton? Had his kindness been an act? Or was there another explanation? She thought of how he'd defended her tonight, the genuine anger in his eyes when Holbrook insulted Tom's memory. That hadn't felt like acting. But then, what did she really know about reading men? She'd thought she'd known Tom completely, and he'd kept his investigation secret until it was too late. Through her window, she could see the saloon's light still burning, somewhere down there. Gideon Rourke was tending bar, keeping order, maintaining his mask of the simple saloon keeper. But Eliza was beginning to realize that in Mercy's Bend, nobody was simple, and everyone wore masks. Tomorrow, she would have to decide whether to trust him or investigate him. Tonight, she held her dead husband's journal and tried not to think about winter blue eyes and the way her pulse quickened when their owner looked at her. The storm that had threatened earlier finally broke, rain drumming on the roof like impatient fingers. Eliza blew out the candles one by one, leaving only darkness and the sound of water washing the dusty streets clean. In the morning, she would continue Tom's work. But tonight, she mourned not just for what she'd lost, but for what she was afraid she might be starting to feel for a man who could be either her greatest ally or her deadliest enemy. The rain continued to fall, and somewhere in the darkness, a coyote howled, lonely, defiant, and very much alive. The morning after discovering Tom's journal, Eliza moved through the saloon like a ghost. She watched Gideon from beneath lowered lashes, cataloging his every movement, searching for signs of deception. He seemed to sense the change. His own glances toward her carried a wariness that hadn't been there before. "You're quiet today," he observed as she picked at her breakfast. Thinking, dangerous habit in this town, he refilled her coffee without being asked. Edmonds was found beaten this morning. Nothing fatal, but enough to keep him from talking to anyone for a while. The news hit her like cold water. Because of me? Because he considered taking your money? Gideon's jaw tightened. "This is what I tried to warn you about. You push, they push back harder." Eliza wanted to ask if he was part of they, but held her tongue. Instead, she spent the morning in town, visiting the general store, the post office, anywhere she might overhear useful gossip. The beating of Edmonds had everyone nervous, conversations dying when she approached. It was Sally Morrison who finally gave her something useful. They met at the small cafe that served as a gathering place for the town's few respectable women. "You need to be more careful," Sally said without preamble. "Langton's men are watching you." "Let them watch." Brave words. Sally stirred her tea thoughtfully. "But bravery won't stop a bullet. Ask your husband." The casual cruelty of it made Eliza flinch. "You knew Tom?" "Met him once. He asked me the same questions you're asking, just more openly." Sally leaned forward. He was particularly interested in the Garrison family. "They owned the biggest ranch outside town until last year." "What happened?" "Official story? They sold to Mountain Vista Holdings and moved back east. Truth. Nobody's seen hide nor hair of them since the day they supposedly left." Sally's voice dropped. "Their foreman tried to say something about it. He disappeared too." That afternoon, Eliza made a decision. She saddled her mare and rode out to where the Garrison ranch should be. The land was beautiful, rolling hills dotted with mesquite, a creek running clear and cold, but the ranch house stood empty, windows staring blindly at the desert. She was examining the abandoned buildings when hoofbeats made her turn. 3 riders approached, the same hard cases from yesterday's confrontation, led by the scarred man Gideon had called Dawson. Well, the widow Carrington. Dawson dismounted, his hand resting casually on his gun. "Funny finding you out here all alone. I was just riding, enjoying the scenery." "On private property." His smile was all teeth. "That's trespassing. Might have to take you in." "To the deputy who can barely stand." She kept her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I think not." Dawson stepped closer. "Maybe we skip the deputy. Maybe we handle this ourselves." "The lady's with me." Gideon's voice came from behind her. She hadn't heard him approach, but there he was, mounted on a black gelding, his rifle resting across his saddle horn. "Rourke." Dawson's face darkened. "This ain't your business. I make it my business." He shifted slightly, the rifle barrel catching the sun. "The lady's staying at my place. That puts her under my protection. Since when do you protect anyone but yourself?" "Since today." His voice was conversational, but Eliza could see the tension in his shoulders. "Now. You boys have delivered your message. Time to go." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Dawson spat in the dirt and remounted. "This ain't over." "It never is." Gideon replied, echoing his words from yesterday. They waited until the riders were dust on the horizon before either spoke. "How did you know where to find me?" Eliza asked. "Maria saw you leave. I know where curious people go when they start asking about the garrisons." He studied her face. "You could have been killed. Would you have cared?" Something flickered in his eyes. "Yes." The simple honesty of it caught her off guard. They rode back toward town in silence, but it was a different kind of quiet than the morning's tension. When they reached the saloon, he surprised her again. "Have dinner with me, not in the public room, my private quarters. We need to talk." She thought of Tom's journal, of the suspicions recorded there, but she also thought of how he'd faced down 3 armed men for her. All right. His quarters were above the saloon, accessible through a door she hadn't noticed before. The rooms were simple but clean, with furniture that spoke of quality rather than flash. Books lined one wall, poetry, philosophy, histories, not what she'd expected from a frontier saloon keeper. He cooked while she explored, producing a simple but excellent meal of steak and potatoes. They ate in companionable silence until he finally spoke. "Your husband suspected me of working with Langton." Eliza nearly choked on her wine. "How did you—" "Because he wasn't subtle about it. Asked questions about where my money came from, who I met with." Gideon refilled her glass. "He was right to be suspicious. I'm not what I appear to be." "Then what are you?" He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "A man trying to forget. Trying to find some peace in a place where nobody asks about yesterday. That's not an answer. It's all the answer I can give right now." He met her eyes. "But I swear to you, I had nothing to do with your husband's death. And I'm not working with Langton. Then why did witnesses see you meeting with him?" "Because he made the same assumption your husband did, that a man with money and a mysterious past could be bought." His smile was bitter. He was wrong. Eliza wanted to believe him. God help her. She did believe him, but belief and trust were different things. "Tell me about the journal," she said instead. "Tom's notes mentioned you several times." "I'm not surprised. He was thorough." Gideon stood, moving to the window that overlooked the main street. "What else did it say?" "That the land grab started around the time you arrived, that you paid for the saloon in gold, that you have skills unusual for a simple businessman." "All true." He turned back to her. "But correlation isn't causation. As your husband learned, I came here running from something. The fact that Langton was already building his empire was just bad timing." "What were you running from?" "The war never ended for some of us." The words were soft, heavy with meaning. "I did things that needed doing, but that doesn't make them right. One day I woke up and couldn't do it anymore." "You were a soldier?" "Among other things." He returned to the table, sitting closer than before. "I've been a lot of things. Mrs. Carrington, not all of them good." "Eliza," she corrected. "If we're sharing secrets, you should use my name." "Eliza." He said it like he was tasting it. "Your husband was lucky to have you. A woman willing to risk everything for justice. I'm not doing this for justice anymore." The admission surprised her. "I mean, I am, but it's become more than that. These people, this town, someone needs to stop what's happening here. And you think you can?" "I have to try." He reached across the table, his hand covering hers. The touch was electric, unexpected. "Then I'll help you." She should have pulled away. Should have remembered that she was a widow in mourning, that this man was still surrounded by questions. Instead, she turned her hand palm up, letting their fingers intertwine. "Why?" she asked. "Because I couldn't save the last person who tried to fight the darkness. Because your husband deserved better. Because—" He stopped, shaking his head. "Because when you look at me, you don't see the things I've done. You just see a man. Is that what you want? To be just a man? It's all I've wanted for 2 years." The moment stretched between them, taut with possibility. Then, as if by mutual agreement, they pulled apart. Some lines couldn't be crossed. Not yet. "I should go," Eliza said. Yes, but he made no move to see her out. Eliza, be careful. What happened today was just a warning. Langton's not a patient man. Neither am I. She left him there, surrounded by his books and his secrets. Back in her own room, she sat on the bed and tried to make sense of the evening. Tom's journal painted Gideon as a suspect. Her instinct said he was an ally. Her heart was saying things she wasn't ready to hear. She was so lost in thought that she almost missed the sound, a soft scratching at her door. When she opened it, no one was there, but an envelope had been slipped underneath. Inside, a single sheet of paper with 5 words. Stop now or join him. Eliza crumpled the threat in her fist. They thought they could frighten her away with anonymous notes and hired thugs. They were wrong. Tomorrow, she would push harder. Tomorrow, she would find the proof Tom had died for. But tonight, she stood at her window and watched the lights in Gideon's rooms, wondering what ghosts haunted a man who could cook with gentle hands and face down killers without flinching, wondering why his touch had felt like coming home. The moon rose full and bright over Mercy's Bend, painting the desert silver. Somewhere out there, the garrisons lay in unmarked graves. Somewhere, Tom's killers slept peacefully, thinking themselves safe. They were wrong about that, too. Eliza Carrington had come to town seeking vengeance. What she'd found was more complicated. A town full of secrets, a man full of contradictions, and a cause worth fighting for. The widow who'd ridden into Mercy's Bend was transforming into something else. Something harder, something more dangerous, and maybe, just maybe, something capable of love again. But that was a thought for another night. Tonight, she had threats to consider and plans to make. The real war for Mercy's Bend was just beginning. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Eliza had been poring over Tom's journal for the 3rd time when she noticed something. A series of numbers in the margins that didn't correspond to any dates or property records. They appeared random until she realized they matched page numbers in the territorial law book Tom always carried. Racing downstairs to the Saloon's small library, she found a similar volume. The pages referenced specific statutes about property transfer and witness requirements. Tom had discovered something about the legal process itself. "You're up early." Gideon stood in the doorway, coffee in hand. It was barely dawn, the saloon empty except for them. "I couldn't sleep." She showed him the journal. "Look at this." Tom found something about how the forgeries were being legitimized. He studied the pages, his expression sharpening. The witness signatures. By law, property transfers need 2 witnesses. If someone controlled the witnesses, they could validate any document. Eliza felt the pieces clicking together. Who are the regular witnesses on the forged transfers? I'd have to check, but there's a circuit judge who comes through every month. Judge Harlan. He witnesses a lot of documents. Gideon's face darkened, and he's due in town today. They spent the morning preparing. Gideon used his connections to learn that Judge Harlan always stayed at Langton's house when in town. Suspicious, but not proof. Eliza, meanwhile, visited Sally Morrison again. Judge Harlan. Sally's expression soured. Corrupt as they come, but smart about it. Never takes bribes directly. Everything goes through intermediaries. Like who? Like a certain gambler who's been losing heavily at Langton's private games. Man named Crawford. Skinny fellow with nervous hands. Sally glanced around, then added, he drinks at Rourke's most nights, gets talkative when he's deep in his cups. That evening, Eliza positioned herself at the bar where she could watch the room. Crawford appeared around 8, already unsteady on his feet. He ordered whiskey with shaking hands, muttering about debts and deadlines. Gideon caught her eye, nodded slightly. He moved down the bar, refilling Crawford's glass with a generous hand. Rough night, Crawford. Rough month. The gambler downed the whiskey. Langton wants his money, says I can work it off, but the things he wants... He shook his head. I ain't no forger, Rourke. Eliza's breath caught. Gideon kept his expression neutral. Nobody's asking you to forge anything, just witness some papers, right? Crawford's laugh was bitter. Witness, that's what they call it. Stand there while good people sign away their land. Too scared or too beaten down to refuse. He gestured for another drink. The Garrisons didn't even sign. Langton just needed me to swear they did. That's a serious accusation. Gideon said carefully. What's he gonna do? Kill me? Already threatened that if I don't witness the Henderson transfer tomorrow. Crawford swayed on his stool. Poor bastards. Been working that land for 15 years. Now Langton wants it for the water rights. Eliza made her decision. She moved to Crawford's other side, catching his attention. What if someone could protect you, get you out of town safely? Crawford squinted at her. You're that widow, the one asking questions. Fear sobered him slightly. Lady, you can't protect nobody, not from Langton, but I can get you to the federal marshal in Tucson. Your testimony could stop all this. My testimony would get me killed before I reach the town limits. Not if we're smart about it. Gideon leaned in. There's a freight wagon leaving before dawn, hidden in the back. You could be halfway to Tucson before anyone knows you're gone. Crawford wavered, hope warring with fear. What about the Henderson transfer? Let me worry about that. Eliza said, do you have any proof? Documents? Anything? Got copies. Insurance. Langton called it. Kept them hidden at... He stopped, paranoia flaring. No, can't trust anyone. Then trust this. Eliza pulled out Tom's badge, keeping it low so only Crawford could see. My husband died trying to stop this. Help me finish what he started. The gambler stared at the badge for a long moment. Then, under the floorboards. My room at the boarding house. Third board from the window. He stood shakily. I'll be at the freight office before dawn. If you're lying. We're not, Gideon assured him. Go home. Pack light. Stay quiet. After Crawford left, they had to move fast. Sally Morrison, bless her, didn't ask questions when Eliza appeared at the boarding house claiming Crawford had asked her to retrieve something from his room. The documents were where he'd said, copies of transfer papers, witness statements, even letters in Langton's own hand discussing the removal of uncooperative landowners. This is it, Eliza breathed. This is what Tom was looking for. It's enough to hang Langton. Gideon agreed. If we can get it to the right authorities. They returned to the saloon to find trouble waiting. Deputy Holbrook sat at the bar, surprisingly sober, with two of Langton's men flanking him. Evening, Rourke, Mrs. Carrington. His smile was unpleasant. Heard you've been having interesting conversations tonight. I run a saloon. I have lots of conversations. With Crawford. Man's unreliable. Drinks too much. Says things he doesn't mean. Holbrook stood, adjusting his gun belt. Mister, Langton would hate for anyone to take a drunk's rambling seriously. I'll keep that in mind. Gideon said evenly. You do that, and Mrs. Carrington, your 2 nights are up. Time to find other accommodations. Holbrook touched his hat mockingly. Wouldn't want you overstaying your welcome. After they left, Gideon locked the doors and turned to Eliza. They know. Someone talked. Crawford? No, he's too scared. But someone saw us talking to him. He ran a hand through his hair. You can't stay here tonight. It's not safe. I'm not running. I'm not asking you to run. I'm asking you to be smart. He hesitated, then said, Stay in my quarters. I'll sleep down here. Keep watch. The offer hung between them. It was practical. Sensible, even. But they both knew it meant something more. All right, she said quietly. His quarters felt different at night, more intimate. Eliza stood by the window, watching the street below, when she heard Gideon return. I thought you were keeping watch downstairs. Wanted to check on you. He joined her at the window. And give you this. He held out a Colt .45, the metal gleaming in the lamplight. It was your husband's. I've been keeping it safe, waiting for the right moment. Eliza took the gun, feeling its familiar weight. Tom had taught her to shoot with this very weapon. How did you... He left it with me that last night. Said if anything happened, I should see it got back to you. Gideon's voice was soft. I think he knew he might not come back. Then why did he go? Because some things are worth dying for. He believed stopping Langton was one of them. He turned to face her. Do you? Yes, the word came without hesitation. But I'd rather live for it. Good, because tomorrow's going to be dangerous. If Crawford makes it to that wagon, if those documents reach Tucson, everything changes. Langton will know we're behind it. Then we'd better be ready. They stood close. Too close. Eliza could smell the soap he used, see the faint lines around his eyes. Without thinking, she reached up and touched the scar on his jaw. How did you get this? Knife fight in Abilene. Man thought I'd cheated at cards. His voice had gone husky. I hadn't, but it didn't matter. He needed someone to blame for his losses. Did you kill him? No, but I wanted to. He caught her hand, holding it against his face. I've wanted to do a lot of things. Eliza, most of them wrong. Wanting isn't the same as doing. Sometimes it is. She knew he was going to kiss her before he moved. Knew she should step back, preserve the boundaries between them. Instead, she met him halfway, their lips coming together with an intensity that spoke of loneliness and longing and the desperate need for human connection in a hard world. It was Gideon who pulled back first, breathing hard. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. Don't apologize. Her voice was steadier than she expected. We're both adults. We both know what this is. Do we? He searched her face. Because I'm not sure anymore. Started out wanting to help because of your husband. Now I want to help because of you. Because when you walk into a room, it feels like sunrise. Because you're the first person in 2 years who makes me want to be better than I am. The words hung between them, raw and honest. Eliza felt tears threaten, for Tom, for herself, for this complicated man who'd crashed into her life when she'd least expected it. I can't, she whispered. Not yet. It's too soon. I know. He stepped back, giving her space. I'm not asking for anything, just wanted you to know. He left her then, returning to his vigil downstairs. Eliza sat on his bed, surrounded by the scent of him, and tried to make sense of her tangled emotions. She'd come here for vengeance, found a cause, and now she'd found something else, something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Outside, a coyote howled in the distance. Tomorrow would bring danger, possibly death, but tonight she was safe in the quarters of a man who'd kissed her like she was salvation itself. She checked Tom's coat one more time, then settled in to wait for dawn. Crawford would make his escape. The documents would reach Tucson, and one way or another, the fight for Mercy's Bend would begin in earnest. But for now, she allowed herself to remember the warmth of Gideon's lips, the safety of his arms, and the possibility that sometimes, in the midst of seeking justice for the dead, the living might find a reason to go on. The candle burned low as she finally drifted off to sleep, one hand on the gun, the other pressed to her lips where the taste of him still lingered. Dawn came too soon, bringing with it the reckoning they'd all been expecting. Eliza woke to find Gideon at her door, his face grim. Crawford never made it to the freight wagon. The words hit her like ice water. What happened? Found dead in his room. They're calling it suicide, but the bruises on his throat say different. His jaw clenched. We underestimated Langton. He had someone watching Crawford all along. Eliza dressed quickly, her mind racing. Without Crawford's testimony, the documents alone might not be enough. They needed another way, another witness. There's more, Gideon said as they descended to the saloon. Langton's called a town meeting for noon. Word is he's going to announce new security measures to deal with troublemakers. Meaning us. Meaning you. Specifically, my sources say he's going to have Holbrook arrest you for theft. Claim you stole those documents from his office. But I've never been to his office. Since when has truth mattered to these people? Gideon moved behind the bar, checking the shotgun he kept there. You need to leave town. Now. No. The word came out harder than she intended. I'm done running, done hiding. If Langton wants a confrontation, he'll get one. Eliza, I have an idea. She pulled out the documents they'd retrieved from Crawford's room. What if we make our own announcement at that meeting? Get the truth out before he can spin his lies. That's suicide. His men will be there. The whole town will be watching. Exactly. A plan was forming. Dangerous but possible. He can't kill me in front of everyone. And once people hear the truth, see the evidence, they'll be too scared to do anything. Gideon shook his head. You don't understand. Langton owns this town. People who speak out disappear. Then maybe it's time someone stood up to him. They argued for another hour, but Eliza wouldn't budge. Finally, Gideon threw up his hands. Fine, but we do this smart. I'll position some of my people in the crowd, men who owe me favors, who aren't completely under Langton's thumb. Your people? He gave her a look. You didn't think I survived this long without building my own network, did you? As noon approached, the town square filled with people. Langton had set up a platform in front of his bank. Deputies stationed strategically around the perimeter. The man himself stood like a king surveying his domain, silver-haired, well-dressed, every inch the successful businessman. Eliza waited until he'd begun speaking, his smooth voice promising safety and prosperity for those who followed the rules. Then she pushed through the crowd, documents in hand. I have something to say. Heads turned. Langton's eyes narrowed, but his smile never wavered. Mrs. Carrington, how nice of you to join us, though I believe Deputy Holbrook has some questions for you. I have questions too. She climbed onto the platform before anyone could stop her. Questions about why the Garrison family disappeared after supposedly selling their ranch. Questions about forged documents and murdered witnesses. This woman is clearly distraught. Langton said smoothly, grief can make people see conspiracies where none exist. Then explain these. She held up the documents. Transfer papers with witness signatures from men who were dead when they supposedly signed them. Letters in your own hand discussing the removal of obstacles. A murmur ran through the crowd. Langton's smile finally slipped. Those are forgeries. Deputy, arrest this woman. Holbrook started forward, but Gideon's voice cut through the tension. I wouldn't. He stood at the edge of the crowd, rifle in hand. Around him, Eliza spotted familiar faces, the bartender from the Saloon, some cowboys from the Bar J, even Sally Morrison, all armed, all watching. This isn't your business, Rourke, Langton snarled. I'm making it my business. He stepped forward, and the crowd parted. See, I've kept quiet for 2 years, minded my own affairs, but this woman's husband was a good man who died trying to bring justice to this town. Least I can do is make sure she gets to speak. You're making a mistake, Langton warned. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Sure I do. Gideon's smile was cold. You're Seth Langton, formerly of Chicago. Made your first fortune selling spoiled beef to the army during the war. Came west when things got too hot back east. Set yourself up as a respectable businessman, but old habits die hard. Langton's face had gone white. How could you possibly know that? Gideon's smile widened. Same way I know about the judge you've been bribing, the territorial officials in your pocket, the plan to control all the water rights in this region. He glanced at Eliza. Your husband wasn't the only one investigating. Mrs. Carrington, he just had the courage to do it openly. You're him, Langton breathed. The federal man, the one they warned me about. The crowd had gone deadly silent. Eliza stared at Gideon, pieces falling into place. His mysterious past, his skills, the way he'd built a network while seeming to stand alone. Former federal man. Gideon corrected. Resigned 2 years ago. Couldn't stomach the politics anymore. But I kept my eyes open, kept gathering evidence. Just needed the right moment to use it. And what moment is that? Langton had recovered some of his composure. You have no authority here, no jurisdiction. No, but she does. A new voice entered the conversation. A woman on horseback rode into the square, badge glinting in the sun. Deputy U.S. Marshal Sarah McKenna, I believe you have evidence for me. Mr. Rourke. Indeed I do. Marshal. He pulled out a thick envelope from his coat. 2 years' worth of documentation. Everything you need to bring down this whole operation. Langton made a break for it, but didn't get far. Cowboys from the Bar J, tired of being pushed around, tackled him before he'd gone 10 feet. Holbrook tried to draw his gun and found himself staring down multiple rifle barrels. I'd advise against that, Deputy, Marshal McKenna said calmly. In fact, I'd advise you to drop that badge. You're under arrest for corruption, conspiracy, and accessory to murder. The next hour was chaos. Deputies arrested, documents examined, the whole corrupt structure of Mercy's Bend crumbling like a house of cards. Through it all, Eliza stood on the platform, watching justice finally arrive in the town that had killed her husband. When things finally calmed, she found Gideon standing alone by the saloon, watching the federal marshals load prisoners into a wagon. You lied to me, she said. I told you I wasn't what I seemed. A federal agent, former... He turned to face her. I meant what I said. I did resign. Came here to disappear. To forget. But then I saw what Langton was doing. And old habits. He shrugged. I started investigating quietly, building a case. When your husband arrived, I hoped he'd be the catalyst to bring in official help. I didn't expect them to kill him. No. His voice was heavy with regret. I should have warned him. Should have done more. By the time I realized how far Langton would go, it was too late. Eliza studied his face, seeing the guilt he'd been carrying. So, everything between us, was that part of your investigation too? No. The word came quick and fierce. Everything I said last night, everything I feel, that's real. Eliza, maybe the only real thing about me anymore. She wanted to be angry, wanted to rage at him for the deception. Instead, she found herself stepping closer. What happens now? Now the federal government cleans up this town. The stolen land gets returned. Justice gets done. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. And you get to decide what comes next. What about you? Marshal McKenna wants me to come back, testify at the trials. After that, he shrugged. I'm done with that life. Thought I might keep running the saloon, if the new, honest version of Mercy's Bend will have me. That's not what I meant. His hand cupped her face. What did you mean? I mean, what about us? This thing between us? That depends on you. I know you're still grieving, still processing everything. I can wait. Hell, I've been waiting 2 years for something worth staying for. I can wait as long as you need. Eliza thought about Tom, about the love they'd shared and the future they'd planned. That life was gone, buried with him in Cedar Falls, but standing here in the dusty street of Mercy's Bend, with federal marshals restoring order and a complicated man offering his patient heart. She realized something. She was tired of living in the past, tired of letting grief define her. Tom would want her to move forward, to find happiness again. He'd liked Gideon, trusted him enough to leave his gun in the man's care. Maybe that was blessing enough. I don't want you to wait, she said softly. No. She rose up on her toes, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that was answer and promise both. This time, neither pulled away. They stood there in the afternoon sun, holding each other while the world changed around them. When they finally parted, both were breathless. So what now? Gideon asked. Now we help rebuild this town, make it what Tom dreamed it could be. She smiled, feeling lighter than she had in months. And we see where this goes, one day at a time. I can work with that. Marshal McKenna approached, tipping her hat. Ma'am, I'll need those documents when you're ready. Your testimony, too. Both of you. Of course. Eliza handed over the papers that had cost so much to obtain. Marshal, how did you know to come today? McKenna smiled. Got a telegram yesterday, anonymous, but it said if I wanted Seth Langton, I should be in Mercy's Bend at noon today. She glanced at Gideon. Wouldn't know anything about that? Would you, Rourke? Not a thing, he said innocently. The marshal snorted. Right. Well, whoever sent it, they did us a favor. We've been trying to nail Langton for years. As she walked away, Eliza turned to Gideon. You sent it? Figured we needed insurance, in case things went bad. He pulled her close. I wasn't going to let anything happen to you. My protector, she said, half teasing. Always, he replied, completely serious. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, they stood together and watched the transformation of Mercy's Bend begin. It would take time to heal the wounds Langton had inflicted, time to build trust where fear had ruled. But it was a start, and sometimes, Eliza thought as she leaned into Gideon's embrace, a start was all you needed. The rest, justice, healing, love, would follow in its own time. Tom's sacrifice hadn't been in vain. The truth had finally won. In the distance, she could see the Langton house, soon to be emptied of its ill-gotten wealth. Perhaps it could become something useful, a school, maybe, or a proper courthouse, something that served the people instead of oppressing them. Penny for your thoughts, Gideon murmured, just thinking about the future. She said, all the possibilities. Good thoughts. The best. She smiled up at him. We've got work to do, Mr. Rourke. Yes, we do, Mrs. Carrington. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. But first, I think we've earned a drink. Owner's prerogative. They walked back into the saloon hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next, together. The fever came on fast and hard 3 days after Langton's arrest. Eliza had been helping organize the return of stolen properties when the world suddenly tilted. One moment she was standing in the land office. The next, she was on the floor with concerned faces hovering above her. Get her to my place, she heard Gideon's voice, tight with worry. Strong arms lifted her, and then everything dissolved into heat and confusion. For 2 days, she drifted between waking and sleeping, between memory and dream. Sometimes Tom was there, smiling and whole, telling her it was all right to let go. Sometimes it was Gideon, his cool hands on her burning skin, his voice a steady anchor in the storm of fever. Don't you dare, he whispered during one of her lucid moments. Don't you dare leave me now, not when we're just beginning. She wanted to tell him she wasn't going anywhere, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she focused on his hand holding hers, on the rhythm of his breathing as he kept vigil through the long nights. Maria was there too, forcing bitter medicines between her lips, bathing her face with cool cloths. You fight, Senora, the older woman murmured. You're stronger than this sickness. On the 3rd night, the fever broke. Eliza woke to find herself in Gideon's bed, weak but clear-headed. He sat slumped in a chair beside her, asleep, his hand still clasping hers. In the lamplight, she could see the exhaustion etched on his face, the shadow of beard he hadn't taken time to shave. Hey, she whispered. His eyes snapped open, immediately alert. Eliza. Her name was a prayer on his lips. How do you feel? Like I've been trampled by a herd of cattle. She squeezed his hand weakly. How long? 3 days. Longest 3 days of my life. He leaned forward, pressing his forehead to their joined hands. I thought I was going to lose you. Takes more than a fever to get rid of me. Don't joke. His voice was rough. Not about this. She reached up with her free hand, touching his face. You stayed with me. Where else would I be? He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. Eliza, I need to tell you something. When you were sick, when I thought you might, I realized I've been a fool. Waiting for the right time, the right moment. There is no right time. There's just now. Gideon, I love you. The words came out in a rush. I know it's too soon, too fast. I know you're still mourning Tom, but I love you, and I needed you to know. In case, she silenced him with her fingers against his lips. I know. I've known since that night you faced down Dawson for me. Maybe even before. And "And I think Tom would be happy," she said softly. "He always said the worst thing about this territory was how it made people hard, made them forget how to love. He wouldn't want that for me." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that somewhere between seeking revenge and finding justice, I found you. And maybe that's the best thing to come out of all this pain." She managed a weak smile. "I love you too, you complicated, secretive, wonderful man." He kissed her then, gentle and careful, mindful of her weakness but unable to hold back entirely. When they parted, both had tears in their eyes. "Marry me," he said suddenly. "I know it's madness, but marry me. Let's build something good here, something lasting. Ask me again when I don't look like death warmed over," she said, but she was smiling. "A girl likes to look her best for proposals. I'll ask you every day until you say yes. That might not take as long as you think." Over the next week, Eliza recovered slowly. The town was changing around them. Families returning to reclaimed land. New businesses opening where Langton's cronies had fled. Marshal McKenna had set up a temporary office, overseeing the legal transition. "You two did something remarkable here," she told them one afternoon. "Most towns this corrupt never recover, but Mercy's Bend might just make it." "It's got good people," Eliza said. "They just needed someone to show them they could fight back." Speaking of which, McKenna pulled out an envelope. "The federal judge wants to commend you both. There might even be a reward for the evidence you provided. Give it to the town." Gideon said immediately, "They need it more than we do." After McKenna left, Eliza looked at him. "Can the Saloon afford that generosity?" "The Saloon's doing fine, better than fine. Actually, turns out people like drinking in an establishment that helped bring down a tyrant." He grinned. "We're becoming downright respectable. Heaven forbid." That evening, as Eliza felt strong enough to come downstairs, she found the saloon transformed. Someone had hung bunting from the rafters, and half the town seemed to be packed inside. "What's all this?" Sally Morrison appeared at her elbow, beaming. "A celebration, for you, for Gideon, for all of us. This town's got a future again, and we wanted to thank the people who made it possible." The night became a blur of handshakes and thanks, of stories shared and toasts raised. The Hendersons, whose ranch had been saved from Langton's grasp, pressed her hands with tears in their eyes. Cowboys from the Bar J bought rounds for the house. Even Edmonds, recovered from his beating and reinstated as land clerk, raised a glass in their honor. "Speech," someone called out, and soon the whole room took up the chant. Eliza looked at Gideon, who shrugged and smiled. She climbed onto a chair, waiting for the noise to die down. "I came to this town looking for answers," she began. "Looking for justice for my husband. What I found was a community under siege. Good people too frightened to stand up for themselves. But you know what? When push came to shove, you did stand up. Every one of you who's here tonight, who refused to bow to corruption anymore. You're the real heroes of Mercy's Bend." Cheers erupted. She waited for them to subside. Tom believed in the law, in justice, in doing what's right even when it's dangerous. He died for those beliefs. But his death wasn't in vain, because it brought us all together. It showed us that together, we're stronger than any tyrant. "To Sheriff Carrington!" someone shouted, and glasses raised throughout the room. "To Sheriff Carrington," Eliza agreed, her voice thick with emotion. "And to all of us, building something better from the ashes of what was." As she climbed down, Gideon caught her, holding her steady. "That was perfect," he murmured. "I meant every word. I know." He studied her face. "You're thinking of staying, aren't you? Really staying, not just until the trials are over. Would that be so bad?" "That would be wonderful." He spun her around, making her laugh. "Mrs. Carrington, would you do me the honor of being my business partner? The saloon could use a woman's touch, maybe expand into a proper restaurant, even a small hotel." "Business partner?" She raised an eyebrow. "Is that all?" "Well, I did have that other proposal, but you told me to wait until you looked better. I clean up pretty well. Mr. Rourke, you look beautiful right now, he said seriously. Exhausted, overwhelmed, and absolutely beautiful. Flatterer. But she was smiling. All right, ask me again. Here? Now? In front of everyone? Why not? This town's been part of our story from the beginning. Let them see how it ends. Or begins, depending on how you look at it. Gideon laughed, then dropped to one knee right there in the middle of the saloon. The room went quiet, all eyes turning to them. Eliza Carrington, he said, loud enough for all to hear. You came into my life like a force of nature. You've made me want to be better than I am, to build something worthy of you. I love your courage, your determination, your refusal to give up even when the odds are against you. I love you. Will you marry me? You forgot to mention my stubbornness, she said, tears streaming down her face. I love that too. I love everything about you, even the parts that terrify me. Well, in that case, she pulled him to his feet. Yes, I'll marry you. The saloon erupted in celebration. Someone started playing a fiddle, and dancing broke out despite the cramped quarters. Maria appeared with champagne she'd been hiding for just such an occasion. Sally Morrison hugged them both, crying openly. Your husband would be happy, she whispered to Eliza. A good man would want the woman he loved to find joy again. Later, as the party wound down, Eliza and Gideon found themselves on the balcony overlooking the main street. The moon was full, painting the desert in silver light. No regrets? He asked. None. She leaned into him. Tom's gone, and I'll always carry that grief. But I can't live in the past. He wouldn't want that. What do you think he'd say about all this? Eliza smiled, remembering her husband's dry humor. He'd probably say it took me long enough to see what was right in front of me, and then he'd threaten to haunt you if you ever hurt me. I'd deserve it. Yes, you would. She turned in his arms. But you won't hurt me. You'll aggravate me, challenge me, probably drive me crazy with your protective instincts. But you won't hurt me. Never, he agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss. Below them, Mercy's Bend slept peacefully for perhaps the first time in years. The shadow of Langton's corruption was lifting, replaced by hope and possibility. It wouldn't be easy, rebuilding never was. There would be setbacks, challenges, probably more danger as Langton's trial approached. But tonight, standing in the arms of a man who'd proven himself in every way that mattered, Eliza felt only peace. She'd come seeking an ending and found a beginning. She'd come seeking death and found life. What are you thinking? Gideon asked. That Tom was right. Sometimes the most dangerous men are those who hide in plain sight. She smiled up at him. But sometimes they're hiding because they're trying to be better than their past. Sometimes they're exactly what a grieving widow needs to find her way back to life. Poetic. I have my moments. She yawned, exhaustion finally catching up. Take me to bed. Future husband. Tomorrow we start planning a wedding and a business empire. Ambitious? You have no idea. He swept her up in his arms, carrying her inside while she laughed. The saloon was empty now, except for a few lingering souls nursing final drinks. They looked up and smiled, raising their glasses in silent salute. As Gideon carried her up the stairs, Eliza caught sight of Tom's badge, now framed and hanging behind the bar, a reminder of sacrifice, of justice served, of love that transcended death. Thank you, she whispered, not sure if she was talking to Tom or Gideon or the universe itself. For what? Gideon asked. For second chances, for showing me that an ending can also be a beginning. The best ones always are. He agreed, and carried her into their future, whatever it might hold. The trial in Tucson drew crowds from across the territory. Seth Langton, once the untouchable king of Mercy's Bend, now sat shackled in the defendant's chair, his empire of corruption crumbling around him. Eliza testified on the second day, her voice clear and unwavering as she presented the evidence that Tom had died collecting. My husband believed in justice, she told the packed courtroom. He believed that no man was above the law, no matter how rich or powerful. Seth Langton murdered him for that belief, and today, we prove that Tom was right. The law is stronger than any tyrant. Gideon testified next, revealing the full extent of his 2-year investigation. The federal prosecutor used his evidence to paint a picture of systematic corruption that reached into the highest levels of territorial government. By the time the jury retired, conviction seemed certain. They waited for the verdict at the hotel, Eliza pacing restlessly while Gideon tried to calm her. "It's over," he said. "Whatever happens now, Langton's finished. The town is free." "I know, I need to hear it. Need to know it's really done." The verdict came at sunset, guilty on all counts. Langton would hang for the murder of Sheriff Tom Carrington, among other crimes. As the judge read the sentence, Eliza felt something release in her chest, a weight she'd carried since that terrible day when she'd learned of Tom's death. Outside the courthouse, Marshal McKenna found them. "You did it," she said simply. "Both of you. That was brave. What you did today, it was necessary." Eliza replied, "Tom deserved justice. He got it, thanks to you." McKenna tipped her hat. "If you ever want to wear a badge yourself, Mrs. Carrington, the Marshal's Service could use someone with your courage. Thank you, but I've got other plans." She took Gideon's arm. "A wedding to plan, a business to build, a town to help heal." "Fair enough, but the offer stands." They returned to Mercy's Bend to find the town transformed. Without Langton's shadow looming over them, people walked taller, smiled more freely. The Hendersons had started renovating their ranch. The Bar J Cowboys had formed a cooperative to share water rights fairly. Even Deputy Holbrook's old jail had been converted into a proper sheriff's office, with a new lawman appointed by the federal judge. "It's like a different place," Eliza marveled as they rode down Main Street. "It's the same place," Gideon corrected, "just free to be what it always could have been." They were married 2 weeks later, in a ceremony that seemed to include the entire town. Sally Morrison served as Eliza's witness, while the new sheriff, a steady man named Bill Roberts, stood up for Gideon. Maria had decorated the saloon with wildflowers and white ribbon, transforming the rough space into something almost elegant. Eliza wore her mother's wedding dress, altered by the local seamstress to fit. As she walked down the makeshift aisle, she carried 2 tokens, her mother's locket and Tom's badge, the past and present united in her hands. "You sure about this?" Sally whispered as they paused at the door. "Never been more sure of anything." Eliza replied, "The ceremony was simple but heartfelt." When the minister asked if anyone objected, old Murphy, the former saloon owner, stood up. "I got something to say," he announced, swaying slightly. The room held its breath. "This here's the best thing to happen to my old place." Murphy continued, "Gideon's made it respectable, and this lady here saved our whole town. Anyone objects to this wedding, they'll answer to me." Laughter rippled through the crowd. The minister smiled and continued. When he pronounced them husband and wife, the cheer that went up could probably be heard in Tucson. The celebration lasted well into the night. Tables groaned under the weight of food donated by grateful townspeople. The bar flowed freely, Gideon declaring drinks on the house for anyone who'd stood against Langton. Someone had even hauled in a piano, and dancing spilled out onto the street under stars that seemed to shine extra bright. "No regrets?" Gideon asked as they took a break from dancing, stepping out onto the balcony for air. "Stop asking me that," Eliza laughed. "No regrets, not one. Even though you're now married to a former federal agent turned saloon keeper. Especially because of that." She leaned against him, looking out over their town. "Tom once told me that the territory needed more people willing to stand in the gap between civilization and chaos. I think he'd approve of us doing that together." "To standing in the gap," Gideon toasted, raising his glass. "To standing together," Eliza corrected, and kissed him under the desert stars. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. True to their plans, they began expanding the saloon. The upper floor was converted into a small hotel with clean, comfortable rooms. The back building became a proper restaurant, with Maria as head cook and 2 local women hired to help. They renamed the whole establishment Carrington's Rest, honoring both the past and the future. Business boomed. Travelers heard about the town that had thrown off corruption and came to see for themselves. The restaurant became famous for Maria's cooking, drawing people from neighboring settlements. The saloon remained profitable, but it was now a place where families could gather, not just cowboys and gamblers. One evening, as Eliza balanced the books in their private office, she realized they'd made more in their first month than Gideon had made in 6 months running just the saloon. "We're actually doing it," she said wonderingly. "Building something good here. You sound surprised." Gideon looked up from the letter he was writing. "Not surprised, just grateful." She set down her pen. 6 months ago, I was a widow with nothing but grief and a need for revenge. Now I'm a businesswoman, a wife, a part of this community. It doesn't seem real sometimes. It's real." He came around the desk, pulling her to her feet. "You're real. This life we're building is real, and it's only going to get better," as if to prove his point. Sally Morrison burst through the door. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's news. The territorial governor's sending a delegation. They want to make Mercy's Bend the new county seat, courthouse, land office, the whole works." Eliza and Gideon exchanged amazed looks. County seat meant growth, prosperity, a future beyond their wildest dreams. "When?" Eliza asked. "Next month. They want to see if we're stable enough to handle it." Sally grinned. "I'd say we've got some preparing to do." The town threw itself into preparations with enthusiasm. Buildings were painted, streets cleared, new businesses opened. The old Langton house was indeed converted into a school, with a teacher brought in from back east. It seemed fitting that a place built on greed would now nurture young minds. The delegation visit was a success, impressed by the town's transformation and the clear evidence of honest governance. They approved Mercy's Bend as the new county seat. Construction on a courthouse would begin in spring. That night, as celebration once again filled the streets, Eliza found herself standing in the spot where she'd first confronted Langton. So much had changed. The platform where he'd held court was gone, replaced by a small park with benches and shade trees. Children played where armed men had once enforced a tyrant's will. "Penny for your thoughts?" Gideon appeared at her elbow, as he always seemed to when she needed him. "Just remembering, thinking about how Tom would have loved to see this. He did see it, in a way. He saw the potential, the possibility. We just finished what he started. We did, didn't we?" She smiled, leaning into her husband's warmth. "Think he'd be proud?" "I think he'd be amazed at what you've accomplished, and probably a little amused that you married a former federal agent with a shady past." "Not so shady," she protested. "Complicated, maybe, but not shady. I love you, Mrs. Rourke. And I love you, Mr. Rourke." They stood together as the sun set over their town, their home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be disputes to settle, businesses to run, a community to help guide. The work of building something lasting was never done, but tonight they were content to stand together and watch the fruits of their labor. Justice had been served, love had been found, and in a harsh land that too often rewarded cruelty, they had proven that courage and compassion could triumph. "Come on," Gideon said eventually. "Maria's threatening to give away our dinner if we don't show up soon." "Can't have that," Eliza agreed. "Lead the way, husband." As they walked back to Carrington's Rest, hand in hand through streets filled with laughter and light, Eliza sent up a silent prayer of gratitude. For Tom, who'd started this journey. For Gideon, who'd helped her finish it. For the people of Mercy's Bend, who'd found their courage when it mattered most. The sheriff's widow had ridden into town seeking vengeance. She'd found so much more: justice, purpose, community, and unexpected love. In losing everything, she'd gained a whole new world, and as the stars came out over the desert, painting the sky with diamonds, She knew that somewhere. Tom Carrington was smiling. His sacrifice had not been in vain. The light he'd carried had not been extinguished. It had simply passed to other hands, burning brighter than ever in the town he'd died trying to save. The door of Carrington's Rest stood open, spilling golden light into the darkness. Eliza and Gideon stepped through together, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. Behind them, the desert wind whispered through the streets of Mercy's Bend, carrying with it the promise of new beginnings and the echoes of a love that transcended death itself. In the wild frontier where justice was rare and love even rarer, they had found both. And that, perhaps, was the greatest triumph of all. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope you enjoyed following Eliza and Gideon's journey through danger, justice, and unexpected romance. Please comment below and let me know where you're listening from. I'd love to connect with fellow Western romance fans from around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to From Wild West channel for more thrilling tales of love and adventure in the American frontier. Share your thoughts about Eliza and Gideon's story. Did you see that twist coming? What was your favorite moment? Let's discuss in the comments below.